They have demanded a briefing with the White House to uncover the big question. Did U.S. taxpayer money fund gain-of-function research inside China's Wuhan Lab? Dr. Fauci denies any knowledge of this, but then again, he's lied before. Here now are Fox News medical contributor Dr. Janette Nesheiwat and the Florida congressman who's leading this effort, Michael Waltz. First of all, Dr. Janette, if I may start with you. You know, Dr. Fauci is a doctor. He's not a politician. Clearly, he's been known to have been working right in, the details of dealing with issues of infectious diseases. And yet now he seems to have turned into this political bureaucrat. You're a doctor. What is your take on the nature of how he's been behaving lately, and if we can trust what he says at this point?
Sure. Hey, Tammy, all I can say is honesty and transparency is of utmost importance, and that's what leads to compliance and less loss of lives. I can tell you, when I took the oath to become a doctor, that also included taking proactive measures to protect my patients, to prevent illness and injury. And part of that is accomplished by knowing and understanding the origin of disease, the characteristics of the disease, and the etiology of the disease that I'm managing. And part of the solution means we've got to understand the investigation, the origin of this virus to deter further outbreaks, to prevent further illness. You know, at the beginning of this pandemic, it was horrific. I took care of thousands of COVID patients, and we had no tests, no tools, no resources, no medications. It was horrible to see my patients struggling to breathe and in pain. And had I had more information from the start, had there been more access to China, more transparency, less lives would have been lost.
Well, you know, more information, even though it might not necessarily solve our immediate problem, it gives people a sense of comfort. It gives you a sense that, all right, you can make decisions about what to do. And we need trust with our doctors, obviously, with someone like you, but then also, Mr. Waltz, with our politicians. Congressman, how do you actually expect to get any real answers from the White House when it comes to trying to figure out, if we funded this? That's an imperative question, because we've got to know if we can stop it.
Well, Dr. Janette is absolutely right, and thank God for her and so many first responders that were out there on the front lines since day one. They deserve answers. The American people deserve answers. My committee has oversight of the White House's Office of Science. The Washington Post's Josh Rogin is reporting that Dr. Fauci was personally involved in turning gain of function back on after the Obama administration, because it was so controversial, had paused it. When did that happen? What was his involvement, right? And, I asked a virologist, what would we have done differently had you known it came from the lab rather than what he was saying from the White House podium, that it came out of nature? And they said, number one, had we known that this virus was on steroids, which is what gain of function does to make it a super spreader, they would have reacted much more differently and much more aggressively. And two, had they known that it was spreading asymptomatically, right? For example, Ebola only spreads once the patient has a fever. Had they known that it was spreading asymptomatically, they would have taken more protective measures so that folks like Dr. Janette weren't so exposed and having to scramble to deal with this. But the bottom line is, we can't prevent the next pandemic unless we get to the bottom of how this one occurred. The Chinese knew that their lab workers were sick. They knew what research they were doing. They knew it came from that lab. And Fauci and so many other proponents of gain of function didn't want that to come out, along with the media and along with the Chinese government. We are going to get to the bottom of it, Tammy, and I'll be back to tell you what we find out.
That's great, and we appreciate you being there. Dr. Janette, thank you for your work. Clearly, it will happen again, considering what we believe has happened already, and it also affects the issue of travel and the nature of how we look at how something like this spreads. Thanks to both of you.